So one of the interesting things about Judaism is sometimes, especially on Passover, we have strange things that we ask questions about. And here in this sanctuary, we have something different in our sanctuary. And it's this chair right here. I don't know if anyone noticed here. You see that chair right there? The talit on it and the kippah. So that is a chair that was set up by Cameron as part of his mitzvah journey. We ask our B'nai Mitzvah to do 13 individual acts in 3 different categories: between themselves and God, between themselves and the Jewish community, between themselves and the world. This speaks about the responsibilities that we have as Jews, not just to ourselves, to God, not just to our community, but to the entire world. And so one of those mitzvot that he did is to remember. And so today we remember Chaim Abish, and Cameron's going to speak about it a little bit later. He was a child who was murdered in the Shoah, in the Holocaust. And he's going to speak about this program in a little bit, but I bring this up because the mood just before I mentioned this was very happy. We were just bringing the Torah. We're about to read the Torah. This is the lifeblood of our people, our tree of life. And yet I introduced just a little bit of sadness. Now, there's a reason for this. In Judaism, even on the happiest of occasions, we add a little bit of sadness. At a wedding, we break a glass to remind us of the brokenness that is in the world. Every Shabbat, for the last number of weeks, I've come up with either joy or heartbreak. And today, it's a mixture of both. Today we mark a different homecoming. Oded Lipschitz, someone that was a man, 84 years old, devoted to peace, murdered by Hamas. And of course the Bibas children and Shiri, which I'll speak about in just a little bit. But I wanted to mention a story. When I was in Israel this summer, we went to Israel's Library of Congress, which is in Jerusalem. Has anyone been there before? Raise your hand. Recently? So it's a massive, beautiful library. And when you walk in, it's just glass that you could see everything. And in the front, they set up chairs for every hostage. And they set up a paper with their picture. And they asked the families to tell them what their favorite books were. And so what they did was they would put the favorite books there, and when a hostage was freed, there would be a ritual. They would come to the library, they would take the book, they would take the library card, and they would return the book to the library so that other people could read it. It's this like beautiful little ceremony that very few people know about. And when I was there, the books that caught my eye were the books of Ariel Bibas, 4 years old, and his favorite book is called My Mother and Me. They even had a little book by Kfir, who was 9 months old. It was a baby book. And I wear orange today in their honor, my orange tie, my orange kippah, because they were redheads. They're known throughout the world for their hair and their beautiful souls, and their mother, Shiri, who held them in their arms as she was horrifically savaged, taken to hostage into Gaza. The 4-year-old that loved Batman, the baby that stared back at us in every picture, begging us to do something, to bring him home. They are gone. And yet, we have others who have come back. Today, Tal Shoham, 40. Avera Mengustu, 38, who's been in Gaza since 2014. Elia Cohen, 27. Omer Shemtov, 22. Omer Wenkert, 23. These were individuals taken from the Nova Festival. And Hisham al-Said, a Bedouin in Gaza since 2015, who had mental illness, schizophrenia, and was taken hostage It's just release. It seems like the Torah is here for moments like this, especially this week's Parashat Mishpatim. We read the following commandments. The one who kidnaps another party, whether having sold or still holding victim, shall be put to death. We see the punishment for kidnapping, even if the kidnapped victim still lives, is the death penalty. And as we read the many of the laws in this week's parsha, which contain the laws of how to create and maintain a just society, we know, and we're going to read, the death penalty was not given out arbitrarily. Rabbeinu Bachya, a medieval commentator, wrote the following comment about this mitzvah, this prayer, this commandment. If someone kidnaps a man and sells him, etc., Rabbi Saadia Gaon explains the reason this verse has been inserted between the one dealing with striking a father or mother and the one dealing with cursing a father or mother. They're in between the two. He writes that seeing most people who have been kidnapped and sold into slavery were minors at the time that they were kidnapped. If or when such a person returns to his home after many years, he or she does not recognize his parents. He may therefore have occasion to strike or curse someone and will not do so knowing that the person whom they strike or curse is actually his father or mother. The cause of such a sin occurring is the kidnapper. This makes the kidnapper morally guilty of the crime committed by his victim and at least theoretically of the death penalty. We see here why they were given the death penalty. It highlights the horrors of the crime and the long-term consequences of it. In this case, Rabbeinu Bachya, he refers to the kidnapped person's child's loss of freedom. But they also lose their identity and their family. In this case, Bachya refers to a child who sins after being freed. But Bachya says that child is not liable. It is the kidnapper who is morally responsible for that trauma and all the severed connections that had happened after. It's a chilling reminder that evil doesn't end at the act itself. It echoes forward in time, creating layers of pain and loss. As we see here, 70, 80 years ago, this child was murdered, and we still remember him today. That pain is still with us. The Torah sees this pain. It doesn't sanitize it. It doesn't gloss over it. It doesn't pretend it's not there. It acknowledges it. It acknowledges the deep and often hidden consequences of violence, and it holds the perpetrators accountable for more than just the surface crime, but what will come after. This, I believe, is part of the Torah's power. It's a witness to human suffering. It doesn't look away. It holds space for horror, for loss, for grief, and yes, for justice. And in doing so, it teaches us to do the same. When I look at that picture that I took of the empty chairs at the Library of Congress this summer, when we read the names of the kidnapped, the murdered, we are participating in an act of witnessing. And in the Jewish tradition, witnessing is never passive. It compels action, memory, and response. The Torah doesn't just leave us in the darkness. It offers us a path forward. It demands that we create a world where such horrors will never happen again. And it teaches us that even in the face of unimaginable grief and loss, we are never alone. In the wake of the Bibas family tragedy, and of course, the many, many others who still remain captive, those who have been murdered, we turn to the Torah not for easy answers, but for the strength to carry the weight that we carry. The Torah is not just law. It is love, it is memory, and most importantly, it is hope.